Hello and welcome to Dev Talks on this very special episode with Air Cmde Nitin Sathe, who's going to take us through his journey of the tsunami in 2004, ravaging the islands of Car Nicobar, which is in the Andamans. He's going to tell us about what the effort was and how things panned out in that time, in that phase of time. Air Commodore Nitin Sathe has over 36 years of distinguished service as a helicopter pilot in the Indian Air Force. He has gained large experience in various different parts of the country in various different roles. He was an instructor at the Defence Services Staff College in Wellington, as well as the president of an Air Force selection board in Dehradun. He's an author and a speaker. He has written books like The Few Good Men and The Angry Sea, which is based on the story that we are going to discuss today, the tsunami. Apart from this, he has also written Up in the Sky, which is helicopter stories, and Born to Fly. Thank you, sir, for joining me today to share your knowledge about the experience that you went through in 2004 when that event, if I may use that word, ravaged one part of our country completely.
Thank you, Aadi, for calling me over on this program. It's always a pleasure to speak and get the story of the tsunami across to a large number of people. So it's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you very much.
Pleasure's all mine as well, sir. As a prelude, sir, I'll begin with a question. As a prelude, I'd like you to give a background to the event of that time. Your location, the situation on the islands, till the day just prior to the tsunami.
Okay. So, the island of Car Nicobar is located about 1500 kilometers from mainland. Okay. And it takes about, it's a 4-hour horrible journey by an AN-32. By fixing nice aircraft like a Boeing and all, it's nice. But going by an AN-32 used to be nerve, it used to really shake you up by the time you reach Port Blair for a quick bite and then onwards another 45 minutes down south to the Car Nicobar. So, firstly, it's so remote. It's so remotely away from a country. In fact, Singapore is closer to Karnik than Chennai is. So that is one thing about Karnik. Other than that, of course, before the tsunami, the question that you asked, that what was happening over there? It was a thriving station. It was a family station. There were 700 odd people staying there, kids. There was a lovely school. A new Kendriya Vidyalaya had just opened up. So they had classes right up to 12th now. So things were looking up for Karnik, and more and more families were joining in to stay there. So it was the 26th of December, Boxing Day, and 25th was Christmas, and it was a Sunday also. So they had a party in the evening, and they were all chilling out at night, and they had got a brand new system, the music system with those disco lights and all for the mess. So they were wanting to inaugurate it. And so there was a little argument happening, where should we have a 25th night party? Should we have it on the seashore that we always have it, or should we have it in the mess? So finally they decided, of course, to have it in the mess. And it was a late night that they had. They must have slept off beyond midnight, I'm sure. And next morning, early morning, the shake-up call, as I would call it, came very, very early at 6:28 in the morning. So people who were in their beds were literally, the beds were thrown onto the walls. It was that severe an earthquake, And 9.2 on the Richter scale, some people say it's 9.1, 9.0, but whatever. Nobody had seen or felt an earthquake of a 9 magnitude ever, or at least on that base or anywhere else for that matter. So people were thrown off their beds, people were slammed against the walls, vehicles were toppled over. It was that bad. So, but nothing else happened. The roads cracked, and our MES houses, we keep cribbing about them, but they are strong enough, and almost every house withstood the shock of the tsunami, as of the earthquake. But there was only one building that collapsed. One of the MES, the new structure that had come up. That is the one which collapsed. Unfortunately, nobody was injured or nobody got hurt as far as the earthquake was concerned. So people started, coming out of the houses. And by the way, some of the doors were jammed, so people couldn't come out of their houses. So people had to break their way out of their homes, come out and start talking to you, what has happened. And when they came out, they saw that the sea had receded by about a kilometer plus from the tide line that they usually saw. And brilliant coral was visible outside the water. Earlier, they used to go and you're not allowed to walk in the water when there's coral below, you'll cut your feet.
Yeah.
So they had never ventured inside into the sea. So this is the time when they saw that the sea had gone back and brilliant coral was glistening in the sun. So all of them went to have a look at that. A large number of people, not all, but a large number went to have a look with cameras and everything, the video cameras and the works, and they were taking photographs. And this is the time when the water level started increasing slowly. So from the time the earthquake took place till the time the tsunami hit, there was a good 45 minutes time available to people. And slowly, the water started coming in. It came up to the houses. It came up way beyond the high tide line, crossed the road, came up to the houses, and it was lapping away at the base of the house, came up into the first floor. People climbed up to the second floor, and on top of those syntax tanks that we have on top, they went and sat on top of them, thinking that it won't hurt them there. And that is the time the first of the tsunami waves hit. So this is what the situation was when just prior to this tsunami hitting the island. And of course, the commander, all the officers got together. They went and tried to see whether the aircrafts were okay, whether the hangar had not fallen down. They were looking at each other. I mean, people were looking around everywhere to see that everybody was safe. So that was what was happening just prior to the tsunami that hit the base.
Where were you at that time, sir?
Oh, yeah. I was very far away. I was in Patiala. I was in Patiala. I was commanding a small station in Patiala. And I did not know the spelling of the tsunami, I must confess. I did not know what a tsunami was because I never tried to find out. Maybe we never use the term tsunami for anything. Nowadays, we talk about tsunami of words, tsunami of everything. We have started using tsunami colloquially. But in those times, I think tsunami, only people who had learned a bit of Japanese or maybe read a few Japanese books knew what a tsunami was. So my daughter came to me in Patiala on 26th evening and said, "Baba, what is a tsunami?" She said. So I said, "What is a tsunami? I don't know." So she said, "No, something has happened. I saw on TV. We had a little barbecue going outside." So I said, "Okay, we'll see. Don't worry." After some time, she came out again and said, "Baba, come and see." So I went and saw. Then the initial news was just filtering in that evening, the 26th evening, and that nobody knew what had happened actually on the island. So the large amount of damage, large lives, 18 lives, 20 lives have been lost in somewhere there. There's some small news coming in from South Tamil Nadu, where the tsunami had also hit. So little by little, the story was building up, and the channels were also not actually giving it the precedence that it actually required at that point in time, because nobody actually had thought that it was so massive, right?
I think it's one of those things where people just didn't know how to react at that particular point of time. Because Now, so moving on, we came on to the time of just before the tsunami, where the officers and the people in the station were enjoying a Christmas. They were probably deciding on how to celebrate the New Year as well. But alas, the events were, events that someone above had planned were different. So may I request you to describe what happened on that fateful morning? We talked about the shake-up which actually happened, and then what happened after that within the station itself, sir?
Yes. So, I took you to the point where the water had reached the level of the first floor, and that is the time a real panic started. And this is the time when people started moving out of their homes and started moving on to the runway, which was about 500, 600 meters from there. You had to walk about 500-600 meters from your homes to reach the runway. And so people started moving on. Some people decided to go on top of their houses, like I told you. And this is the time when the raging sea actually picked up. And the wave started getting bigger and bigger. And then the final tsunami wave hit. A tsunami wave is about 50 to 60 feet high. And it travels at a speed of about 70 odd kilometers per hour on top of the land. And it is about 1.5 kilometers wide. So that is the kind of a wave that hit, the first wave that hit. There was a series of 7 waves that hit the island from various sides on that morning. So from 45 minutes after the tsunami till about 45 minutes after the first wave hit, there was mayhem. There was absolute mayhem. There was water coming in, breaking everything in its path and taking something away. The second wave would come after some time, again hit some at some other angle, hit some more parts of the station. So by and by, most of the station, which was the quarters, the living quarters that were situated along the sea coast, they were getting, I mean, completely razed to the ground. Okay, and this is the time when a large number of people were fighting for survival in the water. They got sucked under. They went out. They came up again. Somebody held on to a plank. Somebody held on to a gas cylinder. There's absolute chaos. Nobody had control over anything. So there are very, very small stories of survival within this first 45 minutes that I have spoken to people about and written about it in my book. But notwithstanding that, a large number of people were saved because they went onto the runway. Okay. So now, when after these 5, 6, 7 waves, there was a sudden calm and the sea started receding back, taking away a whole lot of bodies and everything else along with it. And it went back to its high tide line slowly and slowly. And that is the time when people had time to breathe a sigh of, I mean, not relief, but to start taking stock of the situation as to what had happened. So that is the time when people started looking around for people. Families started looking around for their lost ones. Before this, during the time when the first wave had hit, the station commander himself was going around in his car trying to help the ladies some people to jump onto his car and piggyback towards the runway. Because now the water was coming in fast. So the station commander, all those people who had some vehicle to move around, they were helping, pushing people to move towards the runway. Right? So the station commander himself in this car, Group Captain Bandopadhyay then, his car was washed away.
Wow.
He was washed away. The water entered his car. His car was washed away outside the station. The car was found outside the Air Force station, stuck to a coconut tree. How he managed to survive is in a story itself. But he did manage to survive. He came out of the car. He was actually thrown out of the car also. The car went ahead and he went into the water. And thereafter he walked back to the station. So the station commander had survived. So command control between the station commander and Wing Commander Maheshwar, P. Maheshwar then, he was the coup. So they took stock of the situation, made the groups, and the initial rescue started, and there was no communication. Everything, all the landlines had failed, all the mobile networks had failed, whatever little mobile that we had in those times, and of course the official networks had failed. So the only communication that we had was in the aircraft. So this is the time when the first of the aircrafts got airborne for the first of the rescues that were carried out by the commanding officer of 122 helicopter flight that time, who, of course, my coursemate, and he got a Kirti Chakra for the same.
Fantastic. I mean, it's quite a harrowing experience. I think when the station people would have realized CO Saab gayab hai, that would have been a big morale blow. How much time did he take to come back?
Yeah, it took quite some time. People were looking for him everywhere. It took quite some time to recover himself of the shock and then walk back to the station. Till that time, people were thinking that he's gone. Yeah. In fact, they didn't know where. And there are horrible stories about how children died in their parents' arms and those kind of things. There are very, very sad stories of this thing. But there are some fantastic stories of survival. Rajshekhar was I think he was the Met officer, if I'm not wrong. And Rajshekhar's entire family had gone into this water. All of them were dead except his daughter, who managed to save herself on a plank of wood. And then she was floating in the sea for 3 days, and with reptiles on top of the piece of wood. Reptiles were also trying to save themselves, so they had also climbed on top of her door. And it was Emir's door, studied Emir's door that was there. So this door actually was thrown back onto the island about 2.5-3 kilometers, 2 kilometers away from the runway. But this little girl didn't know which side was north, and she just kept hanging around next to that door when she was thrown back onto the island after 2 days. She was wet, she was hungry, she didn't know what to do. And then she found a little suitcase probably belonging to a newly married couple. And she opened that suitcase, found some clothes for herself, which were too large for her. She was 13 years old.
Wow.
And yeah, and then one of the tribals, she kept roaming around in the jungles for she doesn't know how much time. She kept going around in circles, but she used to keep marking her way so that she could come back to the starting point where she left to find where human beings are. So, such a small girl trying to orientate herself, she was trying to walk along the beach. She couldn't because there were trees and logs all over the place. So, she tried to go inside. Everything was broken. So, see, just imagine a 13-year-old in a situation like this. But thankfully, 2 days later on, after she was washed ashore, about 72 hours or 48 hours later, I think, 48 hours later, one of the tribal boys found her, and he got her back to us. Then she was, she has now become a good architect. She's doing very well for herself, and she's in Hyderabad. So she's an amazing rescue. Story of survival. Thereafter, more survival stories from her because she has to survive without her parents.
My God, and I was a bit shocked when you said 3 days. It's like one of those those series that were there at one time where they were stuck in this marooned island somewhere on a plane.
Yes.
So coming back to our discussion, now you were positioned in Patiala. You were having a barbecue in your house. You heard about this through your daughter. Some news was trickling in. This is thousands and thousands and thousands of kilometers. I mean, you said it's 1,500 kilometers away from Chennai. One can only imagine the doubling of the distance with Patiala. How did you land up in the middle of this entire royal mess that nature had created for us?
Oh, I didn't land up there. I volunteered to land up there firstly. What happened was that there was a operational problem at my station, in the sense that my equipment that I had was moved to a base in J&K because of operational requirements. And my base unfortunately had 300 men and no work. So I had been fighting with my command headquarters that please give me some work or you get me out of here. So I was always told, you're a station commander, you're flying a flag as a wing commander. What's your problem? You just hang on there, something will happen, something good will happen. So I was that gung-ho types, I just wanted to get something to do. So we were doing a lot of things other than the operations in Patiala. But when this happened, I just rang up my boss in Delhi and I told him, sir, I want to go. I want to go and help out this. He says, don't be stupid. So unfortunately for everybody, what happened in Delhi was that my ex-CEO was posted as the ops in the ops branch in Delhi, and he suggested my name to the chief on file. I did not know it was happening. I just gone up to my command headquarters, and so by default, the chief ticked my name, and here I was on my way. Within 24 hours, I was picked up royal style, wing commander being picked up in an aircraft all alone with his luggage. I had to fly to Chandigarh, of course, to pick up the aircraft, take the ride to Delhi. And New Year's Eve, of course, was spent in Delhi, walking on the roads at night because all parties and everything was cancelled. So on that evening. So we were just walking on the road. There are a few of us who have just met that we are going to, tomorrow morning, 4 o'clock was departure from 4:30, I think, from Palam. And the vice chief himself was flying us to the Andamans from Delhi. So that's how I had prepared myself. I had taken a complete close shave because I knew that there would be no haircut for some time. I had picked up some stuff to eat along so that I knew there would be nothing to eat. At least interested in having too many clothes. Just a few overalls and those summer clothes that are required to work. Then of course anti-mosquito measures, this, that, and the other. That little bit of medicines. So I couldn't have too much of luggage also with me. So, but basically I understood what the scene was, and I said, this is what I need for the next 3 months that I'm going to be there. I was told I'm going for 3 months, but I stayed on for a year after that.
Oh wow! I think things take time in these situations. So your flight went from Chandigarh to Chennai or Chandigarh directly across?
No. Chandigarh, we went to Delhi, stayed the night. Next morning, 2 aircrafts got air. Next morning was a good fun. It was like an international departure at a terminal where you're supposed to. There are tables set up all across, and at one place we were getting issued our tents, and one place we were getting a jab for yellow fever, one place we were getting something else, tetanus injection. Every table had something or the other, some activity was there. They really planned it beautifully. So actually we reported at about 2:30 at night, and we went through the process, all these, little medical safety issues. Then they issued us with weapons, because we didn't know what was left over at Karnik. So one odd weapon was there with us, drinking water, rations, everything. Little by little, everything was issued to us, and we kept moving, increasing the size of our luggage, and we loaded onto the aircraft. And Vice Chief, bang on 4:30, wanted to get airborne, so he was there 15 minutes earlier, and we had taxied out at 4:25. So it was actually a mission planned to perfection, and the perfection started from there, and it continued for the next year that I was.
Fantastic. So my question is, I mean, you guys were taking your rations and stuff like that, but the people, 700-800 people that you mentioned, or there were more people on the island, about 700 people, sir?
No, the island had 20,000 people. Yeah, civil is included. Civil is included.
The armed forces.
1/5 of the population had vanished. 3,000-4,000 people were dead, and other than that, the Air Force had about 700. Out of which, what happened was that on the when the first IL went in, most of the families and children survivors were picked up and taken away to Chennai. So when we reached Chennai on the first day, on the New Year's day, the families from Karnik had reached there. So we saw this entire situation unfold at Chennai. We heard stories of what had happened there. The actual feel of what happened at Karnik, we saw at this place, at Chennai itself. Wailing families, wailing ladies, children walking, running around, absolute mayhem. So, Air Force Station Tambaram was the place where these people had arrived at night.
Base ground, sir.
And next, yeah. So, like I said, Adi, that everybody was so terrified of the ocean. They didn't want to go anywhere near the sea. Some of the houses were broken. Majority of the houses were broken, but there were some houses which were kind of not broken. We could go inside and pick up stuff. Okay. So, but most of the families and children, they came onto the tarmac. They were in the open air, and whatever survival kits that we had, the logistics section was opened, and whatever little tarpaulins and whatever material was there, the logistics, that was taken and brought to the tarmac, and people were made as comfortable as possible, because a large number of people were just roaming around all over the station trying to find the near and dear ones. So people had to be called in to check. Nobody even knew how many had died, how many are surviving, because they were all over the place. Okay, first thing was to get them together. Now they decided to stay the night on the tarmac itself. Thankfully, there was no rain. So they stayed the night on the tarmac, and it was December, and surprisingly, Karnik gets pretty cool at night, especially in the open. It was pretty cold for the children. So, in fact, the bad part is that there were some dead bodies also along. People were still keeping their children next to them who died. So that was a sad part, but nobody could. I mean, everything was so shaken up that nobody wanted to actually play with sensibilities and sensitivities of people. So, so that being so, and then khana nahi tha. So what they did was that some of these guys went and rummaged through the houses that they could, pick up whatever there were, breads, whatever there was made, kept in the fridges, some water, a bit of water. There was no water. Most important thing was there was no water to drink. So they went around, picked up some stuff from homes, okay, brought it to the tarmac. The ladies and children were fed first, right? And there were some coconuts that had fallen down, some trees that had fallen down. They picked up the coconuts. And those survival kits in the aircraft, they have those dars. So we had the aircraft which was serviceable and available. So we had those dars there. So they could open up the coconuts and have their water. And so it was on coconut water and a little bit of food that came from various homes mixed around and given. The gentlemen, I think, the men, I think, went hungry for the first night. Thereafter, the logistics section had all the kacha saman. They managed those kerosene stoves, heaters, this, that, and the other. They They took out everything from there, the camp stores, and they set up a kitchen, open air kitchen kind of with a little tent enclosure, where these guys started making dal chawal.
Hmm.
Okay, the next morning they could make dal and chawal. They boiled it and made it for everybody. Salt was not a problem. Salt was available. So that is the first day's meal that happened. Thereafter, when we landed up, we set up the entire base, the tents first on a. There was a new parallel taxi track that was being made, so we set up our tents on that first. We made them orderly fashion. The officers living in the station commander first. Station commander was Squadron Dhar. Group Captain Dhar that time. Okay, so he had one tent to himself. Then we had three PSOs had one tent to themselves. That is PSOs, so-called PSOs, one Ku, one CNJ, and one Cadamo. They had one tent to themselves. The admin, so all three of us could sit in our tents and talk also about what we need to do. And then, of course, there were the youngsters, the pilots, and everybody else. So we were 70 of our guys who was picked up from various parts of the Air Force and sent there, including 7 officers. There were 7 officers and 63 men. So we were the first lot which went there, and the guys who had waited for us to come in, they got into our aircraft and went off. So we were on our own on the first day. In fact, I have written something in my diary. I had noted this down. I write that after the aircraft flew away with the remaining survivors, I said there was an eerie silence that prevailed, broken only by the whining of the wind. We were on our own now, and our mission was about to begin. So this is what I write in my book also, that when the aircraft went by, we were all alone. We didn't know where was what. We didn't know which was north. It was that bad, and we had to start from scratch working. So these tents came up. Then we used to eat from these bottles which you cut oblong. The bottle. Suppose I pick up this bottle like this, a plastic bottle, and cut like this, so I can hold it here and eat from this with a plastic spoon. This was the kind of people didn't want to eat from the plates that were lying around. Also, people didn't want to touch that. So they were happy eating like this. So after about 8-10 days of being there, we started kind of. First day there was a aloo and puri came from in a donia from Port Blair. The ladies made it in donia and sent it to us. Unfortunately, the potatoes had gone bad because of the heat. But we didn't mind it. We did said, "Oh, chalo, kha lete, there's no problem." We ate that happily. So we learned how to survive with the minimalistic living, as they call. No fan, no lights, no water, nothing, no communication. So that's where we started.
Man versus wild, sir.
Yep.
Sir, I'd like to ask you one question before we move on to the actual operation. When you were, obviously when you would have come in that AN-32 coming into the islands to land there, you would have taken sort of an aerial circuit to see the area once. Yeah, hey, hua kya hai, dekhen to see. What did you see and what was your reaction?
Okay. Firstly, the aircraft took off from Chennai towards Port Blair because the vice chief was to be briefed at Port Blair by the then commander-in-chief of there was a lieutenant general there on the island of Port Blair. Halfway through the flight, the vice chief said, "I don't want to do all this. I don't want to go to Port Blair. I want to go to Karnik. That is my base." So the aircraft diverted en route to Port Blair to Karnik. So we didn't know that we were going to behind. We didn't come to know that the decision has been taken to go directly to Karnik. And somewhere towards the end of the journey, when we were descending, we realized that we were coming into Karnik to land, because there were some people on board who had served earlier in Karnik, and they were selected because they had served earlier in Karnik. So they said, "Sir, Karnik jara, it is not going to Port Blair at all." So we were all coming on the way. We were all deciding who will do what duty, who's going to look after this, who's going to write the diary of events, who's going to look after human resource and all that. We're excited about things. So I was trying to give duties to everybody and say, "Ye karna hai, ye karna hai." The task was already forming up in my mind because Vice Chief had told us what he required from us. So then we landed. From the air, we were kind of craning our necks through the little portholes, the dirty portholes there. We can't see much through through those AN-32 portholes. But we did what we could. And while the vice chief also wanted to have a look, so he took 2-3 chakkars of the island. Thanks to him, we could see what was happening. So the sea was a dark brown. I had never seen sea of a different color. Sea was churning with the mud that it had taken in. The mud had not yet settled down, and there were these little walls of water in the sea. You could actually see them from the air. There were walls of water that we could see, and there were logs of water. There was different colored material. They're all floating in the sea as if somebody just kind of dumped things into the sea. So that was what we saw about the sea. As far as the Air Force station was concerned and the island was concerned, everything along the coast had kind of flattened, broken down. There were no roads seen. There were trees fallen off. And wherever this 1.5 kilometer wide tsunami had entered, it was as if there was a knife that had gone through and cut. It goes about to the depth of about a kilometer and a half inside inland. That the power of the wave is so much that it can reach that much in. So about a kilometer and a half inside this island, there were these little brown cuts as if a knife had come through and cut through. So we could make out that this is one wave that came and taken away all the trees. This is a second wave. We could make out that where the water had gone in. So that's what we saw. And besides that, there was really nothing much because there is water all around. And by the time the aircraft is turning, you're more over the water than the island is so small that the entire circuit takes you more over the water and less over land. It's such a small island. It is just 10 kilometers by 10 kilometers. 10 by 12. And the total amount of roads in the island was just 60 kilometers. And that too only on the periphery. There were only 2 buses running there. One is to go clockwise, one anti-clockwise. Once in the morning, once in the afternoon, once in the evening. So that was the communication for people there. Very simple, nice.
It would have been quite a sight to see this one part of the island completely flat because of.
Yes. It was looking funny from the air. Everything is green, and you see these little rectangular cuts made inside.
Wonderful, sir. So landing up, what was the task that was allocated to you? You of course with your team and stuff like that. And how did you start up? It would have taken not much more than a moment before. As you rightly said sometime back, that when the aircraft left, you kind of looked around and said, okay, boss, we've been left here. So it would have taken quite a while to understand what's happening around, to look around. You don't know what's happening. You don't know the areas. What was the task given to you? How did you kind of start up?
Aadi, when the vice chief was speaking to us, the first thing he asked us, how much time can you get this base back on its feet? So somebody said 1 year, somebody said 2 years. He said, bullshit. No, 100 days. So we said, okay, 100 days. We took the challenge. He said, 100 days, I want this base back on its feet. So when you have a task which is time bound, start is known, end is known. What is in the middle is not known at all. The pathways are not known. So where do we start? Where do we start in a situation like this? First, we realize that first is to make ourselves comfortable because we have to work. So my men need to be comfortable first. They should be well settled in, and then I can extract the maximum mileage out of them. So that was what was done first. Setting up of our camp, setting up of tents, dividing responsibilities to everybody. They were just, for 70 people, they had sent 3 or 4 cooks, 3 cooks, I think, and round the clock, cooking breakfast, lunch, dinner. So we have to actually give some of our men into that. This is the first time when we're behaving like the army does. Everybody helps. Otherwise, the Air Force is very cut and dried. The airmen will not go into the mess and peel potatoes. So over here, everybody was like equal, and we used to go and sit with the cooks, help them cut vegetables if we wanted to. And I've done it myself. So if I did it, then people used to kind of go and help around. So this whole team, we are a bunch of people picked up from various bases all over the country, picked up and brought to Chennai overnight, and then put as a team as a team to work together. So this integration of the team is what takes huge toll on the leader, and it reflects on the leadership that is there. So, but Grupi Dhar was such a fine man. I was a task force commander. I was looking only after the operation and the job of the coup plus the task force commander. Grupi Dhar was in charge of everything else, but I was his number two, so I was like kind of dabbling in everything that was happening around. So he was such a happy-go-lucky, boisterous guy. He just took charge of everything and said, "Karo, just do what you feel is right. If you see a problem, do what you feel is right in the interest of the Air Force, in the interest of this base. You will do it right." So that was the kind of freedom given to people to work. So first was to get our communications going. Second was to get communication in terms of wireless as well as the roads. So we had to, and we didn't have anything. We just had one dozer, which was partially serviceable. One dozer. The rest of the things were all destroyed. So the IL had to come in with bigger dozers and bigger equipment because the jetty was broken. The ships couldn't come in.
Oh.
So it's a big melee. Everything is not, nothing is, if you say, humko ye chahiye, but it can't come because this is not available. If isko theek karenge, to this can't be done. So every work you do was affecting some work that you're not doing. So everything was so intermingled, So it is a complex kind of a thing. So, but then we did it by the day. We didn't have, you can't do long-term planning in such cases.
Yeah.
Yes. First thing on the mind was, of course, to get the runway back in shape, get the aircrafts to land, so that the aid could start coming in. So that was the first thing. So there were cylinders, there were a whole lot of things, dead bodies lying around. They had to be cleared. Survivor, after about 4-5 days, we stopped looking for survivors. There was no chance after that. Thereafter, it was just whatever bodies we could find in situ burial, because they were in a bad shape to be even lifted or touched, for that matter. So in situ burial in wherever they were, and there were dogs to grab flesh. So we had to prevent all that happening. So we used to set up fires in the station, small fires, controlled fires, light it up and let everything burn what is there under that. So once in a while, the cylinder used to also burst. Fireworks we used to have, but then we had to play with fire to be there in any case. So this cleaning up was a thing that was happening. The runways came up. That is the time then regular IL-76 sorties started, and every IL used to get 40 tons load in and take back whatever we could send. But generally, nothing was sent back from there because there was nothing left to send. A few people going on leave, some people coming back from leave, some human run, kind of movement
cargo
to take place. Cargo, some spares going back for repair, aircraft spares, those kind of things. But the ILs, you handled 3 ILs in a day, 70 people, khana bhi banana hai, guard bhi karna hai, everything was happening, and 70 people work and no labor available by them, no labor. The locals won't come and work because they were also in a state of shock.
Yeah.
So we were 70 guys, we were managing these 3 ILs, and under the first IL which landed, took off, the second IL couldn't taxi out. So if one IL went unserviceable in the front, we didn't have the tractor to push them out. So it was all fingers crossed all the time. So 3 ILs in one night, 120 tons offloaded onto the tarmac, and thereafter segregated to be sent to the various islands by helicopter. It's a huge amount of task. So it's a round the clock work. I had my office and I'm sitting in this office. Right behind my chair was a little plank of wood. Behind that was my my bed. So it was like work in office. It was right there. That was much later. Till the time we were in the tents. Everything was. There was one ramshackle tent next to the runway. It was an ops room. So we used to just go and sit there from morning to night and observe what was. Control what was to be controlled. After that, when I came to my office, the things which were broken, everything was broken. There was no window, there was no door. But the fan was bent upwards, completely upward. The fan blades were like this, vertically up. So, but I said, there were some cracks and all. The bathrooms were not working. By the way, that was the biggest problem. We'll talk about that in case we have time. So the roofs were not working. So, but I managed to settle down there, and then that became the so-called coups office, from where all the operations used to be controlled. So, taking charge of the situation, getting the logistics going, and then thereafter start building on what you need to do. The long-term plan, of course, was to build temporary shelters for everybody to live in comfortably away from the sea, because no more land. That I think there was an encroachment by the sea by about 600, 600, no, sorry, some X amount, I think 100 odd acres of land we had lost to the sea. So that land was not available now for further, putting buildings on ground. As such, the coastal regulatory zones on the rules were not followed when they built it the first time. Now they had to be shifted in. And since it's a tribal area, the tribals don't like to give away. They don't want to give any more part of the land to us. So the government. So it belongs to the tribals. It doesn't belong to a person there. So the tribal community has to say yes. And even if one person says no, they can't give it. So there was that too. But then we did. Then of course, slowly we started functioning out of permanent accommodation, cleaned up some places, got an officers' mess going separate. Men started living separate. So these little stories, and that is what there are a lot of fun stories also in this. I'm not saying that is all. I may be sounding very negative to you by telling you all this. If I may say, drab, dreary, serious story, but it was not so. We had a lot of fun time. We took people to the beach. Sunday used to be cricket matches on the runway. Though we had to keep people entertained at the same time. Morale is one issue that the leaders had to take care of. That's very, very important in such a situation. In fact, if you allow me, I'll just give an example before we move forward.
Please, sir.
There was this doctor who came from Bangalore, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, he came from Bangalore to be with us. Our doctor had died in the tsunami. So the doctor came in as a replacement. And in the evening, we were sitting with the men. It was typical that, the Seth is sitting on a charpai and his men are sitting at his feet. It was typical scene where the doctor is sitting there having a drink and everybody's having a drink together. And he's talking to the men and he said, this island is in the shape of a mushroom. And it's the mushroom, the stem is cracked already. So one of these nights when you're sleeping, you all go to the bottom of the ocean. Next morning, I had 40 or 50 applications telling me that I need to go back home. He says, I'm not coming here to die. The second thing is the people who are selected from various places. If you had to shed one of your manpower, whom would you shed? You would shed the guy who you don't want, by and large. Okay, unless he's a volunteer, and if you allow him to volunteer. That's what happens in the forge. So a large number of these people, despite the fact that they must have been, I don't know, they must have been, I just making a wild guess, at least a percentage of them would have been the people who were creating trouble for their bosses or, not working hard enough. They would have been the guys who had been sent. But out here, each of these men performed so well that I think they each deserved a medal at the end of it. So in times of crises, absolute, every guy will perform. A Fauji especially, a guy in uniform, I don't think he'll let your country down or let anybody down for that matter. So that's what I saw there. In fact, the police also were there. The paramilitary was there. The Mumbai police was there. The corrupt, some UP police was there. Even 25 paisa if they found on the roadside, they would come and put it in my office. I had a mound of jewelry and a mound of notes and coins in my office. A mound of them. They just come and chuck it in my office and go. They were so sincere. Well, there are amazing stories that I saw, which I've woven through which I've woven in this book of mine, and I couldn't do without giving you pictures. So that's why I had to put lots of pictures in the book so that you could understand what it is to be in a situation like this and how what we did.
I'm sure looking at the surroundings, even the person with the most negative attitude as well says, "Yaar, chodo abhi karna hai." You have absolutely to get this thing going. So you told us about the first series of events, setting up of the areas, the ops room, whatever little offices and stuff like that. One thing you mentioned, there were no washrooms. How did you guys have a bath and those other things?
Yes, the biggest problem was that. Biggest problem was that. So station commander's office was though broken, in the sense it was intact and its bathroom was working for whatever it was worth. So he had a bathroom for himself. And there was this briefing room inside the hangar, which had a bathroom, right? But everything inside the briefing room, there was glass lying everywhere. So I took a jhadu and I put a, I made a little, pathway to walk to that loop. And when I went inside, I saw again the walls were cracked. It is like that those little, there's a tin shed kind of a thing. The hangar is a tin shed, curved tin shed kind of a thing. And on the sides you have the little barrack, which are quite, they're very flimsy kind of constructions. So the briefing room was there, and so I found my way to the loo, and then we used to get those 25-liter cans of water by the aircraft used to get us that. So that one can was for 2 days for everything, from washing to eating to drinking to water. So, and the pipelines for the loos were broken. So what you did in the loo, and if you flushed it at some point in time it would not,
Go.
it would not go. It would start coming back. So we were told, don't use these loos. Be careful. But I did use it for a few days till such time the so-called thunder boxes were created. So we created those Chinese style, the tin sheds, one next to the other with one tin piece in between, and we made those for the loos. And having a bath was a syntax tank was placed between 3 tents, one syntax tank. So that used to get filled with water, and there's a Baltic, common Balti and one mug kept there, and people used to keep their little soaps, mark them and keep them on pieces of plastic there, and then they used to have the bath in the open. That is how it was. Most of the men and all had to go into the jungle. So the SOP was to carry Odomos, carry a stick when you go and do your big job in the jungle. Because if the mosquito bites you there, you might get cerebral malaria. It's deadly. So till the time the quinine and all, we have started taking the tablets when we went in, and some people are still shamming it out and not taking those tablets. So we wanted everybody to be safe, and there was a lot of snakes, reptiles, the works in the area. So when they went out in the open, we had to kind of send them two at one time to help out each other in case something happened. So that was the sanitation hygiene issues. Yes, there was, and God forbid, thankfully nothing happened. Fresh food was being made every day, but if something would have gone wrong with the food, just imagine what would have happened. So thankfully, our cooks were good. They maintained adequate hygiene, and we did manage to survive the initial few days till the time things became better.
And nobody wanted to go to the sea, obviously, to take.
No way. In fact, there's a story there. One day these men were staying in the tents and they used to crib to me. So these central school that I spoke about, the brand new building of Cmde Nitin Sathe had come up. So the water had gone through the school, but the framework had survived.
Achha.
And there was adequate space in that area to sleep under a shade. But school was right next to the sea. You could hear the roar of the sea all the time. So I told them, come on, let's shift there. So they shifted there in the evening. By evening, they shifted on one night. And by around 2 o'clock at night, I was sleeping, and these guys walked up in a group saying, sir, humko nahi manana. We don't want to stay away from you all. We want to stay with you in the tents. So nobody wanted to go to the sea. So much later that we went around, doing picnics on the sea and all that.
So you talked about the morale as well. I mean, we were talking about, you said we used to play some games on the beach and games on the runway and stuff like that. I mean, initially to even ask somebody in that sort of a situation, yeah, chalo, let's play something, let's, get our mind off this thing, would have been very difficult. How do you push a person who's allocated, as you said, to find survivors / deceased people and take care of their remains? How do you boost the morale of a person who's, as you again said, collecting jewelry, which obviously belonged to a human body at some time, and putting it across? How do you find people? This we call it pretty insignificant, these 1-2 rupee coins and stuff like that. But at the end of it, it would have been in somebody's hands or somebody's pocket when it
Yes.
went across. Looking at the devastation around the place, how does one bring a smile to somebody's face?
Firstly, is that after a few days you get immune to what is around you. Everybody does. The health worker works in the most horrible. I mean, for that matter, the person who gets into the gutter and works, he must be feeling very bad in the first few days of getting inside with it, even if he's with the proper equipment. But then it becomes a team. So he blanks out the rest of the thing around him because he has to do it. Without him, things won't work. So that is one of the things that I want to start with. And then as far as getting people to be motivated, I think the situation itself makes you motivated. That's the second part. That situation itself makes you motivated to do something. At least as a good human being, try and give back now that the time God is telling you this is the time to now give back, do it well. So that is the second part of it. Thirdly is that yes, there were people who became so involved in this work that they didn't want to even go back home. So we had to forcibly send them on leave and to take psychiatric kind of, not psychiatric, but they had to go to a
Counselor.
person to counsel, get them counseling, psychiatric counseling, and get them cool them down because they were constantly on the lookout for bodies, so that like my mind was completely jumbled up.
Yeah.
So it takes its toll. And then of course buddy system. We made people no person to work alone. People had to monitor each other's mental health, and then of course talks all the time to them. One good thing that I had one satellite phone with me. In those times, it used to cost 72 rupees a minute, I think. Yeah, 72 rupees a minute. And it was one phone. I was connected directly to air headquarters, that exchange headquarters. So I requested that the satellite phone be used for private calls, which was thankfully allowed. And every person used to get 2 minutes of call time every 15 days to his home. So those 2 minutes were revivers, moral revivers. They spoke to the family. They told them, we are fine. The family was happy. The other end, these guys were happy that the family was fine. And they would start working. Other than that, of course, no birthdays were missed. No anniversaries were missed. No celebration of any kind was missed. Even if the aircraft didn't come for a few days, 4 or 5 cakes would arrive from Chennai for the last 4 weeks' birthdays. So it used to be had. It was good fun. To be living as a close community and working in one cause.
I mean, that's interesting. At least the cakes were coming in for. It's a small thing. I mean, we might.
No. Cakes were coming in because every birthday was. We had a detachment at Chennai who used to be told, okay, so many cakes to be sent on this date for this week. So much sabji to come, so much this to. Every kilo was being weighed here because what has happened is the A30 used to get 4 tons. Because of additional fuel requirement, they used to get only 4 odd tons. From Chennai, if I'm not 4 or 5 tons maybe. So it used to be priority for men chahiye, ki priority for equipment chahiye, ki priority for food chahiye. What is it that you want? So the evening time in the mess used to be spent trashing out this because I was controlling this whole thing. So the logistics officer will come and say, sir, mujhe to ye equipment is required very badly, or the ration is required very badly. The technical officer, the CNO will say, mujhe to I want this thing extremely important. The HR chap will say, I want my manpower as fast as possible. The other manpower has to go on leave. But the aircraft crew did only that much. Even to get through 2-3 kilos of extra vegetables used to be a problem because it was so overloaded. The aircraft was really overloaded coming from there. While going back, of course, we could send anybody and everybody, but there was nobody to go back. To send somebody back, to get him back to the island was a big problem for me. Because they used to come to Chennai and wait. Priority, no priority, keep waiting. Human beings used to keep waiting. Till the time we had such depleted strength here that we had no choice but to arrange for an extra aircraft and get them back, in bulk. So that's the kind of.
as closest to a war situation as what you're describing, apart from the
I think so.
bullets flying over your head.
Bullets not flying. Yes.
So, at what point of time in this entire thing did you feel, yaar, ab control mein aa raha hai, ye ab ho jayega? I'm sure the first 1-2 months things would have been very chaotic, but
Yes.
when did you kind of, as a team, realize that now we are?
I think by 1.5 months, I think, dead man. So maximum 2 months we were on our way. In the sense, things had been fine-tuned, regulated, command control had established itself properly. One. Secondly was the 100-day promise was not for the accommodation to come up. That was afterwards. 100-day promise was to get the fighters to land at Karnik on the 100th day. So it was more operationally oriented, bringing up the base. So a new ATC had to be constructed. ATC entire roof had collapsed, so we didn't have an ATC. It was on the ground. So air traffic control, we had to kind of erect a temporary ATC building structure from where controlling could take place. The radar had to come in. The radar had broken. The radar was brought in from mainland in aircraft. So that was installed. So that got operational. So basic requirements, the fire tenders for the crash crew, the crash tenders at the air traffic control, those were not there. So the refueling Bowsers had to be brought in, new Bowsers. So all the infrastructure required for operations to take place, those were the ones we concentrated on first, right? Because 99 days gone, and I rang up the vice chief and said, "Sir, all done. We are good to go to 100th," and they were already ready. And as promised, the aircraft flew in on the 100th day in the morning. They did an 8-hour trip from Bareilly, if I'm not wrong. Jaguars from Gorakhpur and Su-30s from Bareilly. They took off in 2 formations. They went right up to Ramanad, the southernmost part of India. And from there, they turned around, came over Chennai, and then came to us. So a long trip they did, wearing those things that you wear when you fly a long distance. So they came there and they were so happy. And we were so happy to receive guests on the island. And they were so happy to see what we had done. So we were quite eager to show what the station was and what we had achieved to them. So it was a beautiful time. All the 3 chiefs came, by the way. All the 3 chiefs came in for the, for this one only the air chief had come. Sorry, all the 3 chiefs came for the 1 year ceremony.
Achha.
That was a grander thing that happened later. So in this time the chief had come, and the CNC Western High Command was there. CNC Southern High Command was there, and of course the rest of who was supposed to be there, Shincan and the local government, everybody was there to showcase to the world that the base is up and about and we have our fighters there. So they did about 8 to 10 days of flying there with tankers and all. So we didn't want our fuel to get depleted because our helicopters also had to fly. Because these fighters would consume fuel, and then so what they should do is they should take off, tank up with the IL-76, take fuel in the air, and then do their sorties. So good. It was a good experience for all of us, including the people who came in from outside as well as us, to operate in such conditions, sophisticated aircraft from the base.
So, I'd like to ask you this thing, sir. When you left the base, I'm sure you took an aircraft out, or when you flew over that thing, what did you see in that brown patch that was missing?
See, wherever the seawater enters, it becomes brown in any case. So there were some patches that were still brown. For foliage to start growing, grass it has to get washed and washed and washed. The salt has to come out of the soil also.
Yeah.
So these brown patches, I think a few of them are still there. There's patches of water that have come into the island. For example, the southern group of island, there was an island called Trinket or one of these, in which the water sliced through the island. The island became in 2 parts. So the water formed a huge water body. The seawater formed a huge water body in middle. So this water body is now seawater, and wherever it is touched, it is brown there. in that area. It's become a kind of a lake there, saltwater lake, if I may call it. And it takes years and years for the water to become purify itself. You know,
It'll
even if it
settle
every
and
day and settle down and all that thing has to happen. So when we took off, it was I still remember the date. It was I joined on the 26th January. December was the tsunami. I reached the island on the New Year's, and I left the island on the 27th or 26th evening. Yeah, I think it was 26th evening by the same IL-76, which had got all the families and of the people who had passed away and people of they were all invited for this ceremony on the first year. We had a thing at we had erected one massive 40-ton structure from Jaipur stone, and all the names were engraved on that and all that. It was a nice place that was made. Garden was
memorial.
yeah, kind of memorial was erected thanks to the efforts of the CNC. Then, in those times as youngsters, we thought, "What is this waste of time? Why are we putting so much of energy into a memorial? What is it required now?" But then, in hindsight, I do believe that it was a good thing to do because every people came from. This is the time when all the three chiefs came and the defense secretary was there and everybody was there. So in between, of course, we had from Sonia Gandhi to Manmohan Singh to everybody, Chief Minister of Punjab, and everybody was coming there. VIP visits were sometimes quite a pain for us.
Yeah, of course. A lot of attention gets diverted towards something like this. My last question to you is, I'd like you to, describe the effort of that one person in your eyes who was, was sort of a true hero and who did his duty. Of course, I'm sure everybody went over and beyond the call of duty, but there is, of course, that one person who, who literally goes far, far beyond what is expected out of him. So if there's anybody there in your mind, why don't you just tell us about what he did and who he is?
I don't think I can. If I point a finger at one, I'll be doing injustice because each guy was a gem in his place. And what was happening was every 3 months, these guys were changing. Only I volunteered to stay on for the year, and my Cado and CNO volunteered to. People were thinking we were mad, but we had started something. We wanted to see its fructification. So we wanted to see it in the finish line. So we three of us senior guys stayed on, and every 15-20 days, 1 month, a lot used to change, a new lot used to come. So again, getting them into the game, getting them to know what is happening. So this team kept kind of changing. So if I point out one person in one, but yes, I must actually salute those NCs and those people who worked in the back end, who made us comfortable. Right from the guy who used to come and clean up our places, the guy who used to make our food, the guy who used to run around and get us coconuts to eat, and do barter with the locals. You do barter with the locals, call them over, give them something to eat. They would climb up the trees and get us coconuts. The coconuts were in plenty. So we didn't know how to climb the trees. Of course, there were some Keralites around with us who wanted to, but I said nothing doing. You're not climbed them for ages, so you will not climb. Let's get the professional guys to do it. So we used to get these guys. We used to give them some khana. Our interaction with the locals were very good, very good. We used to play football matches with them, attend their weddings, whatever. We used to really, and they've got a huge amount of affinity for the armed forces. Very nice people. Tribals are very, very good in Car Nicobar.
Sure.
So I can't really point out one person. I'm sorry, but I think a few persons who did the best job, I think, were the class 4. I should not call them class 4 now. They are the people who actually did the admin support at the back end.
The backbone.
So, without them, without the guys who would have, we wouldn't have survived there. Those are the guys who really worked. I mean, they used to be working during working hours, then to come after working hours, work for us, then ensure that the khana is also served properly. They were the same guy who was the waiter, the same guy who was my peon, the same guy who was running around cleaning up with us. Multiple work he was doing. So yes, those guys I think we must salute for doing a job well done, very well done by them.
I'm sure, so these are the unsung heroes of the entire
Yes.
effort. So this has been a journey, I mean, that you've taken, especially one story is not going to go out of my head for a long time, and I'm going to sit down and do some research about it. It's about that little girl who floated in the sea for 2.5
can
odd
share.
days. It's quite a story to listen to. And apart from that, actually, how the Indian Air Force got together and did what it did to get the base operational within 100 days is something I think very, very unique. And I believe my effort in making this video and stuff like that, and your major effort in terms of the talk that you've given, we would reach some amount of more people, telling them the story.
Yes.
And of course, thanking each and every individual that was there within this effort, sir. So I thank you to you for.
Can I say a last few words?
Sure, sir.
Just in case you want to. It's the problem with all of us, especially in India, is that we don't record our history well.
Yeah.
And because of which we forget. We have had a tsunami. We have had bigger disasters. We are going through a disaster now. What have we learned from that? Because nobody does write about it. Nobody makes an effort to bring out stories. Even if you're writing a very simple survival story out of that, it will give people something to work on. So my effort was because of some friends of mine who said, no, you must write. I never had written a paragraph in my life other than the official letters that we wrote in the armed forces. So somebody pushed me hard enough, and it took me 10 years to bring out this book. 9 years later, I started writing the book. 9 years it took me to start penning it down. But everything was so fresh in my mind because it was engraved in me like a story. So I could write it from my heart, and I just put it down on paper, and the editors did their bit, and the publishers did their bit, and then that is how we got this book out. So I always tell people that life is like a grindstone, whether it grinds you down or polishes you up. It depends on what you're made of. So I always end with this quote.
I think that's a very, very interesting parting quote, sir. Thank you so much for that. It's been a wonderful talking to you. I'm sure I will push you enough to get you back on this forum for another subject on another day. Till then, Jai Hind.
Yeah. Jai Hind, and thank you very much for a patient hearing. Thank you.